Good afternoon, Flick-In fanatics, and welcome to our Spider-Man Retrospective Episode 2. We are entering the Garfield-Verse. Scott Fox and I will be talking through and breaking down our thoughts and opinions on the Amazing Spider-Man duology, whatever you want to call that. And we will get to that right after this.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
All right, get down the banners. So many things. Hi, guys. Yeah, we're doing things a little differently. I don't have an overlay or anything today. We're flying by the seat of our pants, but I think we are very much looking forward to I Love Your Shirt, Scott. It is very cool. Still a quirky merc. I didn't have a spider outfit ready for the day. Thought about getting a onesie, but it just hasn't shown up yet.
I have one here, but it's in kid size, and nobody needs to see that. Nobody needs to see me stretching that little fabric over this much body.
In the words of, I believe, Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2, it rides up in the crotch a little bit.
Yeah, that it does. Yeah, as soon as you pull it over the shoulder, it's got to come up from somewhere. So,
all right, everyone, thank you for joining us so very much on this special episode. We are going to be talking about Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Spider-Man. We're going to do it a little differently than some of the other channels. We're not reviewing each episode or each movie in its entirety. We are more kind of highlighting elements of it, like how the portrayal of Peter Parker was, how the relationship was done, and how he did, Spider-Man action, web swing, all that good stuff. So without any further ado, let's kick into it, and feel free to leave your comments down below. In fact, you think what I might do here? This is our old layout. Obviously, it says Tobyverse, but we're going to use that right here just in case you want to do any Streamlabs donations or anything like that. Just let us know that you want to see more things like this, more exploratory retrospective reviews and things and stuff. Anywho, ramble. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is how did we feel, and we might have some hot, spicy takes, how do we feel about Andrew's Peter Parker in these two films?
I actually like how Andrew, it's a different, again, trying not to compare, just taking this for what it is. I like this more of an introverted type of Peter, a little bit more of an emo feel, but not like Venom symbiote emo like we had previously gotten. It just more of a choosing to be a bit more of a recluse. Keeps his head down in class, doesn't really engage a whole lot, is intentionally avoiding the crowd. And so also I think the portrayal of him as a high schooler went a little bit longer than Toby's transitioned out. And granted, by the second movie, he's out of it. But Star Drew, I 100% agree. I know I said there would be hot takes when I posted about this on Twitter. And I will say The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is still my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie.
Ooh, that's fun and spicy.
Yeah, the first one. The second one's got some issues, but this first one, Andrew Garfield is personally, and we know that a movie is subjective, is my favorite Spider-Man movie. And specifically Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker in his transition to becoming Spider-Man. I love the way the character arc goes, and his Peter Parker is pretty good.
And I really like his Peter Parker. I do, and I think he is the most charming and also the best acted. I think Andrew Garfield's the strongest actor to have portrayed the character.
Totally.
When he sobs, when he cries, you feel it. It's a gut punch. When he smiles, it's like the most disarming smile, and it just makes you feel warm inside. So you feel whatever Peter feels throughout. My problem is kind of more external, and to me, it was the choices they made with like how Peter was represented in the movie. More so felt like Sony to me, instead of trying to tell the story of Peter Parker, they were trying to figure out how to sell the story of Peter Parker with the addition of the skateboarding and the kind of like hipster elements and stuff like that. Is like they didn't modernize it because they thought it'd be better for the character. It felt like they just wanted to be like, ooh, what are the hip new kids into now? And so some of that felt really fake and off to me, but none of that is an issue with Andrew Garfield. His performance was phenomenal. He did as much as he could with what he was given. Now
you're a skateboard guy, so what did you think of the whole Andrew Garfield skateboarding?
It was very commercial. The skateboarding in the movie is very commercial. It's much like when they throw skateboarding in the Ninja Turtles, and you're like, well, this is just to be like, we're cool teenagers and stuff, and so it came across very inauthentic.
Again, that's a studio choice versus a portrayal issue. He did a good job with the script and the material given to him, and I want to echo your comments about the emotional connections. He did a good job of connecting the emotional things. The movie as a whole hits on a lot of those beats that, not trying to compare too much, but that the Toby-verse didn't. And it was hard to watch this without mentally comparing it to, because we had gotten 3 Toby movies and we were supposed to have a 4th. That all gets dropped and blown up. Next thing you know, we're sitting there with Andrew Garfield, a completely different person, playing this role, and we're getting a reboot, which, you know, everyone's like, gosh, we got to see Uncle Ben get killed again. All these different.
What was the time difference? Was it 2007 to 2012?
5 years.
5 years, yep.
And again, Sony had to make this or they lose the rights to the property. And so instead of trying to carry on or maybe do a different iteration, they went with Reboot. Again, different, and it totally, I agree, had the feel of, we're looking at what are the cool counterculture kids doing, the skateboarding group that's not the jock group, and we're going to pull them into this and use that group as a symbol for how we want Peter to be portrayed and accepted.
And I think using Peter Parker as a transition to the next topic, so much of what was done well, I think, with Andrew Garfield is how he worked with the other actors and the other characters, whether that be Aunt May, Gwen, or even Gwen's dad, Captain Stacy. And I think he did it better than everyone. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I really do. But the unique interactions he has, or he's even with Reese Ifans' Lizard or Kurt Connors, and then, you know, Jamie Foxx again once we get into the sequel, Dane DeHaan, everything was amplified, I think, through having Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, which brings us to maybe compared to the other movies, or maybe just within its own right, how do we feel about the relationship, the core-centric relationship, the romantic one, obviously, I think is something that's talked about the most in the Amazing Spider-Man films, because, I mean, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield blossomed into a real-life relationship. But also, the director, Mark Webb, comes from a romantic background, having recently done before that 500 Days of Summer. And so my question to you is, did they nail or close to nail the relationship between Peter and Gwen?
So there's
Very
two
important comic relationships.
There's a couple relationships in this movie that really are huge. Actually, almost all the relationships are echoed in this young man looking for a father. We notice when he rescues his first big thing, when he saves the cars falling off the bridge, and he rescues the little boy and he hands him back to the father. And the father's like, my son needs help. These little notes of the father-son relationship are huge throughout the movie, even with Gwen Stacy's father and the relationship of the advice at the very end that he gives Peter when he gives him back the mask to leave Gwen out of this is not just a protective thing for his daughter, but it's also a wisdom thing for a son to tell him, hey, listen, if you're going to do this life, and a police officer knows better than anybody, if you're going to live the life of somebody who fights crime and is in that line of duty, it's hard on a family. So he's doing this both protectively to Gwen, but also trying to give fatherly advice to Peter to say, hey, this is going to be hard on your whole life. to have this type of relationship. And then on top of that, you get in the relationship with Gwen Stacy. In the arc of all the movies we've gotten, the Emma Stone, Andrew Garfield, Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker relationship is the best done. The chemistry is more genuine there. I think Tom and Zendaya have pretty good chemistry, and it works really well, especially now that that's starting to build. But Gwen and Peter was so good in The Amazing Spider-Man. So I feel like that's the relationship portions. And even when we talk about Uncle Ben and Aunt May, also the casting to get Martin Sheen and Sally Field as the aunt and uncle in this movie, dynamite. The casting was spot on with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And so his relationship of searching for a father figure, having Uncle Ben be a father figure, having Aunt May, and having this struggle and trying to figure out who he is as an individual. All those pieces work really well. And I don't know if you heard, but I said that the relationship between Gwen and Peter in this movie is light years ahead of what we got with Toby and
It feels so much more authentic, and
that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Whereas I think Mary Jane, it was a very fabricated relationship. It's something that we see suffer a lot in the Superman film, where Lois Lane is the love interest because we know that she is, and there's nothing past that. Where I think Amazing Spider-Man did a great job of making it believable and feeling like, of course, these two would fall for each other.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it worked really well. And I think Zendaya and Tom in the new movies have a very good chemistry as well. They play off each other quite nicely. But this really was the best as far as you genuinely understood when, at the end of number 2, the heartbreak that Peter feels, and his only thing to do is go hide himself in Spider-Man.
And you talk about the relationship of the search for a father figure and stuff. You talk about Aunt May. The ownership that she has over Peter really has its emotional peak in the second film, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where she tells him, like, you're my boy. Your parents weren't there. I raised you. And every time I watch that, it gets me. It absolutely gets me. And
it hits on all the emotional levels.
The Garfield films, despite the flaws that they may have, they always, both movies, seem to emotionally impact me more than any other Spider-Man film has to date.
I'll be honest. The Peter and Spider-Man combination in both these movies, as well as the Gwen Stacy relationship, which I love the fact they went with Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane. They changed it up, went with a different variation on it. Aunt May and Uncle Ben, perfect. Martin Sheen and Sally Field, great. The flaws in these movies are the choices made with the villains.
Yeah,
and I don't even think Lizard was a bad choice. It was not what I was expecting. They had a lot of Spider-Man's got a lot of villains they could have pulled from.
It's not a bad choice. I just feel like the potential, they didn't hit it. Like, I feel like Kurt Connors was definitely put in the movie to serve a purpose. The villain wasn't given a whole lot of depth. He definitely was not a Doc Ock. I will give the Toby movies the fact that Otto Octavius was a well-handled villain.
Best. And Sandman really delivered well. Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman in his limited screen time was really, really well done. But not playing the comparison game. This the problems in this movie, I don't even think were with Kurt Connors and Lizard. They really fell into the second movie with a rush to have too many villains. You introduce Rhino in glimpses. The choices made with Jamie Foxx's character with Electro, and I can't remember his actual name, but Electro. The visuals they went with Max Dillon. The visuals they went with it for him were just. I understand there was a comic book representation that they could pull from, but then even with Harry Osborn as Green Goblin, it seemed like they tried to shove too much, and we didn't get development with any villain in that movie at all.
Well, and what we did with Max Dillon was something that it has never worked. It didn't work when it was Jim Carrey doing Edward Nygma. It didn't work when it was Jamie Foxx. And then they did it again in Wonder Woman 84 with Kristen Wiig's character. They're all like the exact same character, and all of them are so cringy and uncomfortable, and like they feel more cartoony than a comic book. And what a waste to have Jamie Foxx in that role.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm very excited that we may potentially get a redemption for the character in No Way Home.
His look alone redeems.
Did you see
I
the
didn't
character
even-
posters for Jamie
did.
Foxx? It looks like he's got like a prison uniform underneath all of the. So interesting.
I'm excited for it. There were just a lot of choices in number 2 that I think were crammed forward with. I know the whole intention with the third movie was to start to bring in the Sinister Six, trying to rush some of the storyline. Sometimes a movie, and this won't blow anybody's mind, does too much, and they try and studios are the worst at this. Warner Brothers specifically at trying to cover too much ground too quick with storylines, and they pack too many people in, and we got poor development from 3 different characters. Harry Osborn's gone for 10 years, comes back, suddenly they're best friends again, and he's got questions for him, and it's like, what is going on here?
You also kind of reminded me of, we're talking about cramming things in. The Holland-Verse isn't the only thing to be impacted by the MCU. The Garfield universe was created so that Sony doesn't lose the rights, and also the first one came out the same year as Avengers, and they were trying to play catch up. They're like, what can we do to match the Avengers in the Sonyverse? Well, we can set up the Sinister Six, and they just tried to hit it quicker than Justice League, and
what's crazy is there was originally a request to have the Oscorp Tower in the first Avengers movie,
right.
But they didn't get approval until too late, and so they couldn't mix it in the movie. They wanted to bridge this gap and make it more universal, and it's disappointing to me in that, in the same way with Toby, we didn't get a third movie or a fourth movie. We didn't get even a third movie out of Andrew, and Andrew, my opinion, did a fantastic job as both Peter and as Spider-Man. And let me just say, visually, holy mackerel, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man looks so good.
Well, especially in the second movie with the suit, which let me bring up. I have all kinds of audio visual assistance here, but just look at the suit here in the center remains to be the best Spider-Man suit that we've had.
One thing I will say, in the first movie, he's got blue and red grips on the hands, and I did like the blue fingers on the hands. But the overall suit definitely better in the second one. But I do like the first one. They're both really good. Definitely better than what we got in Civil War, and it almost feels like so in college football, the Oregon Ducks have a new uniform for every game they play. Right? That's what it feels like with Tom Holland. He's got to have a different suit, a new thing to wear, and another look for everything, except for they keep recycling the Iron suit, Iron Spider. Like, let's move forward. Like, he made that really sweet one at the end of Far From Home. Stick with that.
Well, talking about the suit, I want to talk about one of my favorite aspects of the Garfield movies, and that is like the action and the web swinging and stuff. And just, it's really, it's demonstrated kind of in this shot right here. How comic accurate
that is glorious.
It was beautiful. It's beautiful. I can sit on this frame forever. Like for the rest of the stream, we can just watch this.
When I rewatched it, you had commented on this last week about the physics. Toby would shoot the web and fly, right? For physics, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You have to tug the line for it to take tension to pull you forward. Andrew would shoot it, and then after it would hit, you'd see the yank back that would launch him forward. Every time. They didn't miss on that at all.
Yeah, it was just a lot of people affectionately refer to the Garfield movies as Peter Parkour, and that's stuck with me. And I think it's great in the movement. And granted, a lot of it's CGI, but like when he's fighting the lizard and the way he crawls around him and webs him and stuff, and when he's in the sewers, everything about it was the most spider-like Spider-Man that we've ever gotten.
What a leap we made between 2007 and 2012 with the quality of CGI rendering. Both, and again, some of the technology was there, but man, what a big leap it made in the finished product on the screen. Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield looks so good flying through the city. And that one trailer, that one video clip of him swooping through, and then he lands on the window and you can see his reflection in the window. Still one of the coolest shots in any Spider-Man movie, period. Might be the best.
I think the Garfield films really captured, and again, a lot of this is because of Andrew, what it could feel like to be Spider-Man. And every bit of that, what the joy feels like, what the adrenaline feels like, but also the sheer responsibility and the weight on his shoulders. That was something that was just a constant in these movies. Always a consequence, always, there's always some burden that he always had to deal with. Whether it was the death of Gwen's father, the death of Gwen, the death of Ben, like there was a lot of death in these two movies. He had to feel kind of responsible for what Harry ended up doing, because he refused to help him because he didn't know, what it might do to him.
There's again, the character arcs, all really good. Andrew's Spider-Man, oh man, he's got the quippy humor so much better than Toby or even Tom. Oh no, you found my one weakness, small knives, and then he sticks the guy to the wall. Does the extra shot to the guy's crotch just to be a jerk. He the way he portrays Spider-Man, he's got some of that sense of humor, and it's almost like he's an introverted kid and he puts on Spider-Man. Now he can let it out,
which I've always thought is Peter Parker.
Totally,
because it's kind of like hiding behind a keyboard. It's like nobody knows who I am. I can get away with anything, and so he just gets to let out any kind of like vitriol or anything that he may have. And he takes it out on these villains. Some people are like, they don't have said that they don't like Andrew Garfield because he's a bit of a jerk, and I was like, especially in the earlier comics, things like Spider-Man can be and is a jerk. Obviously not to the people he saves, or his friends or anything, but when he's antagonizing villains, he gets real personal sometimes.
Can I also say I really love the fact that they showed some of the tech portion? We skipped right by the organic versus synthetic web
even
slinging.
Tom Holland in 6 movies or whatever gets everything handed to him. Andrew Garfield's tinkering is just
when it shoots off and sticks him in the face while he's working on everything. That's what happens to people who try and invent stuff. They get shocked, they get electrocuted, things happen. And
in the second movie, he made the electrical, the conductive webbing so that he could fight Electro. And and it's my problem with the Batman movies. We never get this kind of gadgetry and building and stuff. And I love that.
No, anything he asks for in the Batman movies, he just asks Fox for, and he makes it in the background, and then boom, I've got it. Or, oh man, I want to play a superhero. You got anything in there? And next thing you know, they go over and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I've been building these tanks and all these things for a long time. Enjoy. I do want to say I agree with Galaxy Geeks. I think as a whole, I still love Amazing Spider-Man 1's suit better than Spider-Man 2. Even though Amazing Spider-Man 2's suit, I think there are portions of it that I like better, but I do like some of the details with the first Amazing Spider-Man with the blue tips on the gloves. The feel of it almost has a Spider-Man 2099 type of feel with the bulk of the suit. Yeah. And I just like the aesthetic of it. I'm not saying number 2 is bad. Both of those suits are better than the Toby-verse or the Holland-verse. I'll take either one of them, in my opinion.
If we're ranking suits, I put the second Amazing Spider-Man suit as my number 1, but actually the Raimi suit as my number 2.
Okay. And the Raimi suit, it was the same suit all 3 movies. Right. I don't think we got any variation on that, other than, the black suit, which was a huge thing when that came out. I mean, every kid dressed as Black Spider-Man for that Halloween. And then we have, as far as Spider-Man, him coming into his own as a character, as a hero, and realizing the responsibility in the first movie on the bridge is when he realized that he's more than just this kid picking on small-time criminals. When he saves all those people on the bridge, it helped him come into his own as, I'm now Spider-Man. And the guy even asked him, who are you? And that's where he says he's Spider-Man. Such a great moment.
Slightly related in Amazing Spider-Man 2 when he's in the little 7-Eleven or whatever it is, and he's picking up cold medicine, and he stops the guy robbing him. He's like, hey, you're that spider guy. Yeah, I'm Spider-Man. He's got the nose cold.
Oh, yeah.
Kills me. But you bring up, the responsibility and things. I think I want to talk about themes. How are the themes handled in the Garfield films? Because some of it's handled well, and some of it, I feel like, the conversation I had with Lauren is I feel like anytime they're retreading something, they kind of fail to do so. And it's the worst parts are the parts where they wanted to check something off a list, but they wanted to make sure that they were different. instead of just focusing on adapting the comics. So like, well, we can't say with great power comes great responsibility because we said that already. So they have this like fumbling, over-bloated, long-winded monologue that really detracts because everybody and their mother knows what he's trying to say.
Totally. They took a moment that is one of the better moments emotionally connecting in the Tobyverse, and they tried to do it a little bit differently. However, the savior themes, a lot of those things are really important, and I think they handled them well. The relationship theme of the struggling between the duality, right? Every superhero has their secret identity and their which then it depends on, is your secret identity your real person? Is Peter the secret identity and Spider-Man is who he is?
Right. We talk about Batman all the time.
Ben Affleck was the first guy to pull off Batman as the main, and then Bruce Wayne was the mask, right? And I feel like by the end of number 2, once Gwen's gone, we've finally reached that point where now Spider-Man is the place he hides, right? Or Spider-Man is who he is, and he only comes out as Peter when he needs to handle something. Otherwise, he's Spider-Man from then forward, which is, again, why it's such a shame we did not get a third movie. But the duality of it, in the lack of a father, he's taking cues from other people. He's always looking for somebody, an adult male figure, to give him advice to help him on this path. Which is normal. Everyone wants a mentor, and they're always trying to cram a mentor type person. In the first movie, it ended up being Captain Stacy. Unintentionally, it was Captain Stacy after Uncle Ben died. He thought it was going to be Kurt Connors, but that turned out to be the bad guy. And so this search for that, it was, I think, pretty well done.
I agree. I think that's a good point. One of the things I think maybe it would fall under themes, but I think it's also kind of its own character, is how they handled the impact of New York on Peter. This is the most New York Peter we've ever had. When he first starts swinging, he's like, "Hey, I'm swinging here." When he's going through traffic, and I love that. But also the way that the people of New York interact with Peter throughout these films. You know, when there's the beautiful scene with the cranes all lining up after he got shot in the leg so that he can swing through them and get to where the lizard is, I think is a lot more impactful than like, hey, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us, that we got in the first movie.
Oh my goodness. That's a really cringy moment. But yeah, it is what it is.
The themes of responsibility is obviously always going to be a constant in Spider-Man. It should be the most constant in a Spider-Man story. And I think that is handled well when they're not trying to do it through dialogue. I think it is shown well through actions and events that happen in the movie. But when they try to verbalize it, I think it gets a little muddled.
Yeah. I did like... So the search for answers is a theme in all these movies too. And the search for answers in the second movie, when he starts to get a hint about who his father used to be and who his father really is, and trying to track that down, finding out that his father knew that Oscorp was going to do terrible stuff. So they actually went into hiding and buried all the technology that they had discovered. There are parts of number 2 that were done really well to help build on number 1. The problem, again, is that they crammed too much.
Well, you bring up his dad, and that, for me, kind of reveals an issue with the movie in themes, and that is kind of like this theme of destiny. And I don't think that belongs in a Spider-Man movie. I think the randomness...
Like he was intentionally made to be this?
Yeah, because basically what happened is the spider was imbued with his dad's DNA, and that is the way that it interacted the way it did with him, instead of, causing craziness or whatever, like what happened with Dane DeHaan later on. And so there's like, so he had to be like bitten by a certain spider, and it had to be the one like with his dad's blood in it and everything. I was like, that's really convenient and very like kind of chosen one. And
that's like a meteor falling to Earth with a symbiote on it.
While you're making out with your
less than a block away from Peter Parker. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it just happens that way, right? All attached to his bike, finding my way home.
I think these movies have some of the like higher highs than any of the other Spider-Man franchises, but also potentially like the lowest lows, because the Electro is a complete miss, as was pretty much Harry Osborn. Outside of the casting, Dane DeHaan was great.
Dane DeHaan was really good up until he became Green Goblin. The look was so bad. Of the 3 Goblin that we got, it's the worst aesthetically. Electro, I understood what they were trying to go for, but essentially he became less of a human and more of an ethereal, like electrons just conglomerated into the form of a body, like Mr. Manhattan. Like that's like, are we going Watchmen here? It had a ton of Watchmen vibe just with electricity.
I can tell you what's going to be sad for me about No Way Home is we are expecting Garfield to be in it. And if he is, I know I'm going to want more from him after No Way Home. And I'm sure that this is just like a send-off, a respective send-off of the Spider-Man. And I love Tom Holland. I do. And I'm not saying like I want Tom Holland to be done, but like I would love it if we got back and got Amazing Spider-Man 3 and had like multiversal Spider-Man things happening. But I know that's just wishful thinking. Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man. I think the Peter Parker aspect, it's close. I think Tom Holland wins out that for me.
Okay.
But it's just because some of the decisions Sony made with Peter Parker. I
I
think
love
Garfield
that-
does act better.
I love that Tom Holland is still a high school, 3rd movie in,
Well,
right?
third proper movie. I think they
Third,
said
yeah.
after it takes off, I think it's going to become a college film. So I think
And
you
that's-
might find.
That's fine. Again, we got 2 full movies where he's still struggling through high school. That's more of the high
and in
school
between
development.
films.
Yes, and in between films. We've got so much more screen time with Tom than we ever had with Andrew or Toby. And that's a shame because Andrew he brought so much to the role that could have been fantastic. And I will say that I'm actually going to pick Andrew as my top Spider-Man and Peter in both those categories.
Well, I can
Again,
respect it.
Tom very close on the Peter portion of it because of his growth as growing into his own and the relationships and how he's starting to figure out how to talk to people, how to establish and we'll get into that next Monday. I know I don't want to get too far ahead, but when we do that, the Tom-verse.
Next Monday, I believe what you are telling the viewers and listeners here is that next Monday or next Saturday morning, actually.
No, there you go. Saturday morning.
News and views on Monday, but Saturday morning we'll be recording into the Holland-verse, which is dense. We have 2 proper movies leading into a 3rd coming out very shortly that we're excited for. But on top of that, we'll probably discuss his introduction a little bit in Civil War, Infinity War, and the return in Endgame. As you were saying.
With that, and I know we weren't wanting to rank all these guys, but it's impossible. Once you get past Toby, you have to. We can't not live in a life where it's a comparison game, right? I love all 3 for what they were in their respective, right? I love Toby for what Toby was in the Raimi-verse. I do. But if I had to choose one that I want to see another movie with, give me another movie with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Like we got to see Rhino for 3 seconds at the end of the movie. And that's it.
A lot of people are like, oh, do a Toby movie with like him as like kind of the Peter B. Parker older one. I was like, Andrew Garfield's older enough that you could do that with him.
And
have Garfield be a mentoring.
You know, no, give me Jake Johnson. If you're gonna do Peter B. Parker, go all the way Jake Johnson. He was so good. You, the young kid, just learning, me, the old wise one. Like the relationship between Peter B. Parker and Miles Morales was literal perfection.
I hope we get some Peter B. Parker in Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh, I am okay. I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent.
Easy to do.
But you know what's funny is when we get into maybe after the second movie, after the what is the new one called? They just
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse. Right. Maybe after that one, we can sit down and do one of these reviews of, because we'll have 2 movies to see how the character arc really builds. Because right now we have 1, and I will say, I always am careful to say what is the best live action Spider-Man version, because Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie and that's not even a remotely close conversation. I think Garfield is the best that's close to that, but man, they hit a home run with that movie like you wouldn't believe on Into the Spider-Verse. But I love Andrew Garfield, and it was highly disappointing when they canceled the third movie because his disagreements with the director and with Sony and all the issues they were having. And it's sad because I would have loved to get a completion on that.
As much as I wanted more Andrew Garfield, I don't think I wanted their Sinister Six movie, though. Them having just post-credit scenes with the guy in the hat walking by, Doc Ock arms, vulture wings, and all this other stuff. Be like, we're just going to throw it all together, sloppy, and just...
That makes it seem like the Oscorp created the Sinister Six instead of those guys created themselves and then being pulled together. And I don't like the idea that a parent corporation made all these villains, as opposed to saying, hey, these were villains that stood independently on their own and then teamed up against Spider-Man. That would have been a better arc to go with. And again, Spider-Man 3 rushed that. We're just going to throw mud at everything. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 2, two main villains crammed in really quickly with bad development, and then an extra one tossed in for flavor at the end. And again, he gets arrested in the beginning, then suddenly he comes out and he's developed a rhinoceros suit.
And it was definitely a hot mess. By the end of it, it was a hot mess. And
by the way, Paul Giamatti, still a great actor, and I wish I could have seen him in more of the rhino suit.
I loved him in the beginning. Well, I am Alexis the Savage. He's just little rhinos on his underwear.
a lot of really good little nods in there, but it's just a shame it didn't pay off. The second movie really, I don't want to say was a complete letdown. I did pull them up. Take a stab at what Rotten Tomatoes is.
Oh, for Spider-Verse 2?
Let's do number one first.
2. Number one. I will say 75-83.
72 critic, 77 audience. Take a stab at number 2.
43 critic, 65 audience.
52-64. But still not good. And I believe in the total arc, it's right near Amazing Spider or the Spider-Man 3 with Toby. Not good.
Starters being critical.
23% Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Not quite that low. And 72 Amazing. I think that was pretty close though. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on this. We talked about Peter Parker. We talked about the relationships, Spider-Man, action, web-swinging villains, themes, and we're going to do it all again next Saturday for Tom Holland, which will be an in-depth one because Tom Holland's still got the most content. There's the most to talk about. So please join us for that. Let us know your thoughts. Like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us. Scott, thank you for dedicating your time. I know I made a very busy Monday for you, but I appreciate it.
No problem.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy revisiting those movies and especially doing like a whole marathon. I've never done that before. I've never just started burning through the Spider-Man movies. So can't wait to watch some Tom films. All right, guys. Until next time, keep it real. Keep it webby, whatever that means. And we will see you on the interwebs next week, next time. Talk to you later.